Good evening. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Hawg Talk podcast, part of the Believe and Buzz Radio networks. You can hear us on all podcast platforms as well as Buzz 2 106.7 in Central Arkansas. So please like, rate, and review our podcast. And as always, we're coming to you live at the Corey Hyman Studios. I'm your host, Porter Hayes of Sports and Culture Arkansas, and alongside me is Jacob Davis from Arkansas Fight and Saturday Down South. And we're brought to you by Bet Online. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports development, including this year's basketball championship finals, in NHL hockey finals, Major League Baseball, and the latest fighting news. Bet Online, where the game starts. And guys, we have a special guest tonight. We brought him back again, Jake Crain of now Crain and Company, presented to you by the Workman's Travel Center hotline. And usually, Jake, when you go on a podcast to talk about your journey and how far you've come, it kind of stops there, and you kind of took a new leap. And from getting hacked at SEC Media Days and then having the J-Boy show, and some people kind of plateau off, but you decided to go to a new level. You're with the Daily Wire now, so kind of talk about your journey for those who don't know from the beginning, and tell us what you got going on with Crain and Company.
Yeah, man. Well, number one, I appreciate you guys having me on. Must be about football season. Yes. From what I can tell. But, number one, I was very fortunate, very blessed to be in the situation that I'm in. Played college baseball, a little bit of college football. And when I got done with that, I got into coaching in college football and coached 9 years, 6 at the Division I level, and was up in Montana coaching when, the quarantine hit and COVID hit, and they sent us all back home. And I bought a $50 mic and, just started kind of just talking and kind of, really using, I guess you could say, my expertise. I mean, when you grow up in a football family, if I grew up in a family full of chefs, I'd probably have a pretty good chef podcast. But no, just started doing it out of my back room in a duplex, and it ended up getting big, and they moved me to Atlanta. And then we did a deal with Colin Cowherd. We're in the middle of renegotiating that deal. And then Ben Shapiro reached out to me on social media and ended up signing with them. It's in the days of commitments and NIL, I guess that was our, me flipping my commitment, I guess, at the last second. But no, it's been great. Moved up here to Nashville, got engaged in the last, 4 months. So it's been a lot, but very fortunate. And yeah, we're live every weekday, 2 to 3 Central, 3 to 4 Eastern, obviously. We do a Saturday special as well. We're going to start doing probably a Sunday show to recap college football. And we talk everything. And my thing is this, we work for the Daily Wire, and obviously the Daily Wire is political with Ben Shapiro and now Jordan Peterson and Matt Walsh and them. But we talk about it when it intersects, like the Djokovic stuff and the Leah Thomas stuff. But I'm not going out of my way, to give you something that I think politically, because I feel like when you're watching a sports show, you want to talk about sports. And the only time I talk about, politics with Cohen and Blaine are when it intersects. And I think we've lost common sense nowadays. So it's amazing, how much of an audience you can build if you just use common sense and you're not afraid to say it. So that's what we've done. David Cohn, our other co-host, played, quarterback at Michigan for Rich Rod. My brother played out at Western Colorado, and football is our specialty, I would say. But yeah, man, we cover everything from NHL to NBA to college football to the NFL. So I'm really excited, to take it, on to a new level and on a national level. And look, I'm trying to take it as far as I can go. So I know if you're good at something, you work hard enough at it, and you get opportunities, you take advantage of them. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
And how hard was that? You talk about your sports show, and when you start tiptoeing into that political / sports where it kind of intersects. How hard was it to kind of say, all right, I'm going to tiptoe my, in that water and then see kind of how successful, but realize you're a show and, sometimes negative publicity is publicity and you're getting clicks. So was that hard for you to kind of go that route?
Well, it's funny because you guys know this, being in the sports business, especially talking about football in the SEC, you're going to piss somebody off either way. So I was kind of used to football, to be honest with you. So, I tell the guys at the Daily Wire, y'all think people get mad about politics? Let's talk about what happens on Saturdays in the fall.
Yeah,
I'll show you people get real upset. But, again, I think it's anything. I think just being yourself. I've never been intimidated or afraid to say what I think. And it's not like I'm sitting there like, oh, if you think this way, then you're an idiot or you're not smart or you're a bad person. I'm a firm believer in dissent moves us forward. I mean, if we all agree, this would be the most boring place of all time. And the worst thing you can do is get into an echo chamber, because how are you ever going to grow? I mean, if you're not able to, defend your position or at least have a position, how are you ever going to grow if you're not listening to other voices and other opinions? So, it's been amazing. I mean, we've had Herschel Walker on, we obviously talked a ton of football with him. I try and get, people on when we do go into the politics realm or have to talk about it that played sports. We had Jim Jordan on, who was a national champion wrestler, who understands it. And, it's amazing. I get a lot more emails back from people on a certain side than I do on the other one, which I don't, my thing is I'll interview anybody. It doesn't matter to me, but I'm a firm believer in everybody's opinion should count, and everybody, should have their own opinion. And regardless if I agree or if I disagree, I'm going to tell you what I think. And I think that's what people want. I think that's what we're missing. I think we're missing having both sides of an argument. Everybody just, is so dug in on either side that it's either you're evil or you're just flat out wrong. And again, you can disagree, but we disagree with such hatred now. It's amazing. And you're never going to get anywhere. That's why we can't ever find solutions, because everybody's so upset. But my thing, guys, is this, and this is kind of the flavor I wanted to bring to it. I wanted to have a sports show that when people turn into it, they don't feel like they're getting sucker punched, like for their political beliefs or whatever. I want it to be where it's 90% sports, and if there's 10% where it intersects with politics and I have to talk about it, then I'm going to talk about it. But I've never really done anything to try and get clicks. Like when I'm putting out preseason predictions and doing all these things, I'm not aiming to try and piss everybody off. What I'm aiming to try and do is to tell people exactly what I think, why I think that, which in turn, some people are going to agree with it, some people aren't. But I always enjoy interacting with people that don't, because even though I've been in the business, of college football and sports my whole life, I still learn stuff every day. So it's been a fun journey for me. And, like my dad used to say, man, scared money don't make no money.
Like that. So, what is your thoughts right now on the current state of the SEC and college football realignment? Where do you think the SEC stands at this point?
Well, the SEC is going to stand above in football for a long time. I don't see that changing. What I compared it to on the show the other day, and, we all grew up kind of watching the same product, and I think the difference in college sports and pro sports is that more local feel. It's the hometown teams aren't just in Philadelphia and Los Angeles and Dallas and Boston. You've got Fayetteville, you've got Auburn, you've got Oxford, you've got Eugene, you've got these places where you kind of feel a little bit more of a connection than you do, in my opinion, if you're not from one of those big cities, to your team. So when I see the SEC and college football in general kind of changing, it's the analogy I use is kind of like your mom's lasagna, right? If you grew up and your mom's lasagna was your favorite food, she made it the same time every time, you could always count on it. Then all of a sudden you come back from college one day and she makes vegan lasagna. Now, it may be a little bit healthier for you, but it's still not mom's lasagna, and it'll never be mom's lasagna. So I do worry that we're losing a little bit of that traditional pageantry of college football, but there are areas where I feel like it's better for the game. Now, from an SEC standpoint, Greg Sankey is 3 steps ahead of everybody else. If there's going to be a czar of college football or a commissioner of college football, that's going to be the guy. So I don't really worry about the SEC and the moves they're making. I found it interesting that you guys, Jacob, I believe it was y'all, put out something today saying the SEC wanted to stay at 16, which I'm a fan of, which I think we need to have 4 16-team Power 4 conferences, as you could say. I would like to expand the playoff to 8, but they're going to expand it to 12. So, in reality, I'm not against it. I don't hate it. I think the SEC is always going to be in the forefront. I'm very interested to see how this works out with Clemson and Notre Dame and teams like that. But when it comes down to the SEC and positioning, they're going to be at the top of the poll more times than not.
Well, when you look at Arkansas and the SEC, you know, they when they were in the Southwest Conference, they were kind of forced at hand. They knew that, you know, Texas was going to join the Big 12, and they knew Texas didn't like Arkansas, and they would be basically pretty much, if they didn't join the SEC, they would be an SMU right now or a Houston. Somebody always, you know, conference hopping, trying to, you know, find their way into a conference. And I
call
think
it the toys.
Yeah. And I see that what's going to happen with, you know, the Big Ten and the SEC, these teams like Clemson, who would never have thought of coming to the SEC. Now they're having to think that, because what if you start having these, you know, 18 to 20 team mega conferences, and Clemson either joins, you're with the Joneses, or you're left playing UCF and SMU and whoever every year, and you're not going to be at the big boy table anymore.
No, and you know, it was interesting. We kind of hit that today a little bit. I actually let off the show with it. You know, they came out, Dennis Dodd and them, saying that it's going to cost $500 million for an ACC team to lead the conference unless there's some sort of an agreement, which they're not going to reach. I mean, for $500 million to go to the SEC, I'm not doing it. But if I'm Clemson or I'm Miami or I'm FSU, I don't want to leave the ACC unless I absolutely have to. The path to the college football playoff is so much easier. I mean, Clemson plays an SEC team. In South Carolina, it's their rival. And they've had a lot of success, even though I like what Shane's doing over there. You know, I think they're in a good spot. And you go back to last year, guys, when I look at the ACC and all this movement. If you would have told me that the Pac-12 was probably going to shut down and the Big 12 was going to thrive, I would have put you on the first boat to Shutter Island. But now a year later, you look at it and it's kind of where we're at. So when it comes down to the ACC, I think the teams like Clemson and Florida State and all these teams are in a good spot. And let's think about it, guys. When was the last time that Miami, Florida State, and Virginia Tech and some of these other teams have been down like this? It's crazy all at the same time, and it's all cyclical. So I think the teams in the ACC are in a good spot. And if I'm Clemson, I'm not moving.
You see behind me here. I don't want to go. You know, it is. And you, as a fan, you could sit there and say, oh, well, we play our Georgia every year or South Carolina. But I think South Carolina going down hurt Clemson, because, you know, they're used to actually being a competitive game. So you're playing a Texas A&M. They were playing Alabama, LSU. But with the fall of South Carolina on their schedule, and then with playing in the ACC, that's where this decline really started, with their schedule being basically a cupcake and pretty much what you see in the SEC East, outside of Georgia if they're good, or Florida if they're good.
Yeah, well, you know, I'd throw Tennessee in that mix too right now, to be honest with you. But when I look, here's the difference, and this is what I say. People have a common misconception. They think when these coaches are talking about the grind of the SEC, it's, oh, no, we have to play Bama once a year. Oh, no, we have to play Georgia. That's not what makes the SEC so dominant. What makes the SEC dominant is you got to play the big dogs, and they're probably going to slap you around the yard a little bit, but then you got to play LSU. Then you got to play Kentucky, that's transformed themselves up front. Then you got to go to Fayetteville. Then you got to go to Auburn. I mean, hell, Vanderbilt's the only bye week, really. There's not a night off in the SEC. And every environment you go to, I mean, you go to Davis Wade and play, it's tough as hell. I mean, you go anywhere in the league to play, you got to be on your P's and Q's from the jump. So it's that grind. It's every week having to show up. That's why the SEC is always a battle of attrition. The reason that Alabama and Georgia have had so much success lately isn't just because of the starting 11 on offense and the starting 11 on defense. It's because they got 64 guys that are ready to rock and roll, that are legitimate players. And I always say, you know, depth's not just for the Pacific Ocean. The more depth you have, the better you're going to be, and they kill you with depth, especially depth up front. Because as Arkansas fans, y'all know this better than anybody. That game is won and lost at the line of scrimmage. I don't care if it's the NFL. I don't care if it's the XFL, the USFL, college football, some form of football they play on Jupiter or Mars. The game is going to be won and lost up front, and it will always be that way.
Yeah, so we were talking, you know, with it being, you know, up front battles. What do you think about Arkansas going into this season? We know that they have an offensive line. Obviously, they have Sam Pittman. What do you think? What do you think about them going this year? I think you said 9-3. I think you said they lost to Auburn earlier this season. Open up. Tell us.
No. Actually, I actually, Jacob, changed that. I thought they were going to lose to Auburn about a month and a half ago, because we didn't put our predictions out. We were talking about it on the show. I was kind of looking at where it fell on the schedule, and you know as well as I do how Auburn and Arkansas is. But when I look at Auburn's roster, I got Arkansas finishing second in the West. Yeah. I got them going 5-3 in the league. I got them losing to Alabama. I'd have to go back and look at it. Do they play Georgia again this year off the top of my head?
No,
I believe they do. I have them going 5-3 because, again, you guys know as well as I do, it's brutal in the SEC. And September 24th and October 1st, that's going to be a hell of a 2-week stretch. You got A&M and then Bama. But I think Arkansas is going to have a heck of a year. I got KJ Jefferson as a dark horse to make it to New York. Not win it, but make it to New York. When I look at what the Razorbacks have and I look at their makeup, we always talk about in football the 3 pillars, right? Recruiting, development, and culture. Those are the 3 things. It starts with recruiting, you develop them, and that's what turns into your culture. So I think Sam Pittman may be the best fit in college football. And I'm not saying that because I'm on an Arkansas show. I've said that since he took the job. Yeah. I think he's an Arkansas guy for life. Obviously, the fan base has embraced him, and he's embraced them. And I look at KJ. I look at the coordinators returning, what Barry Odom was able to do with the roster. Speaking of depth, I mean, y'all know better than anybody. Y'all's what he was able to do last year was, straight out of Hogwarts with the depth you guys had on defense. So I think Arkansas is going to be more of a complete team this year. KJ coming back another year under Kendall Briles. I love the St. John kid at tackle. I love Stromberg, the center. I know pass pro wasn't great last year, but I like what they returned. You get Jaden Hazelwood out of the portal, which I think he's going to blossom this year. Losing Treylon to the Titans was tough. But Kendall knows how to operate that offense. The thing that Arkansas does so well is they can change pace, but they don't change their identity. They're going to run to open up the pass. But in having that, when you have a guy like KJ Jefferson, that RPO game is a lot more deadly. And KJ's a sneaky runner. I don't think people give him enough credit. His physicality, I mean, he's as big as an oak tree. But he's able to move a lot better laterally than what people think. So it's a tough schedule. But I think Arkansas is going to go 9-3. I think it's going to be a big year for those guys. And I think Sam Pittman in Arkansas, they're going to be a problem for a while. So I like the Hogs this year. I like them a lot.
And I've said for a couple of weeks that for me, the biggest question mark, you brought up Hazelwood, would be that if you want to get, KJ in that conversation to New York, he's going to have to throw for over 3,000 yards. He's going to have to, they've been a run heavy. You've got Burks, but you're going to have more than one receiver. And I think Trey Knox is going to have to step up at the tight end. I've said it so many times, the 3 levels. You need a deep threat, a slot guy, and then a tight end. So I think that's going to be the biggest question mark for me, how these transfer portal guys are going to be. But it does help having KJ. So what is your biggest, when it comes to offense, we know what they got coming back on defense, but what is your biggest key or question when it comes to the offense for Arkansas?
I think it's balance. I think it's not leaning too much on either or. When KJ's cooking and when the offense is cooking and when any offense is cooking, you're somewhat, yeah. And again, I see the thing. I did call Rocket Sanders. I said a long time ago, David, you heard it. Anybody named Rocket Sanders is going to be good, okay? Names really matter. I don't mean to digress. But when I look at this balance, and that's what Kendall understands, whether it's the tight end and the seam, you get a lot of cover 2 in the SEC. Being able to put a tight end in the seam is huge in that one-on-one matchup with a linebacker. But that's where you lean on Kendall Briles. That's where you lean on that offensive line. That's where you lean on that play action game, that RPO game, being able to attack defenses on different levels and different times. And one thing I do think Kendall does a good job of is pitching backwards a little bit as a play caller. He's really hard to dial up when he has weapons around him because he spaces you. He's almost like a basketball team that goes 5 out. You never know where it's going to hit you. But something they have to improve on is third down. They've got to be able to convert more on third down. I think they were 37% last year, which was better than the previous 3 years. I think they were 34%, but it's not good enough. The game, again, offensive coordinators get paid and offensive coaches get paid, not in between the 20s. They get paid to score in the red zone and get first downs on third downs. That's what you get paid to do. And when you look at what KJ is able to do, how he's able to affect the defense, as a guy that was a defensive coordinator, as a guy that was a secondary coach, what scares the hell out of me is when you're able to move the pocket the way that Kendall and them do, and you're also able to be strong in the run game, because I'm going to have to rob Peter to pay Paul at some point, and I hate to do that. So I think balance is huge, and then third down efficiency. But again, when you have the offensive line coming back, I think Arkansas is going to be very much improved because, again, that's Sam Pittman. That's his Girl Scout cookies, man. That's what he knows. So I know he's not the O-line coach, but he's in that room. I know he's in that room, and we both know he's in the ear of the O-line coach, and they're working in tandem.
Yeah, and you've got Jalen Catalon coming back at safety too, which he's a heck of a safety. I mean, one of the best in the country. How big is it for him to come back this season? When you have a guy like Latavius Brini coming in from Georgia, you have a Nudie McLaughlin coming in from LSU. you've got so many pieces there in that secondary. You think Arkansas improves in the secondary kind of what they were last year? Or do you think they get better?
Yeah, I do. You're getting one of your generals back on the field. You're getting a guy back there that a lot of people look to in that back end to make the call. Bumper's going to handle everything in the front seven and a little bit outside the box. So when you're able to have guys that people respect and guys that can make plays, and what Catalan gives you is he's not just a downhill safety. Now, he'll come knock your head off. I mean, he ain't scared. But Catalan gives you an experience to where he'll always put you in the right position in the back end. And whatever new guys are there, you know what makes it a lot easier for a new guy? When you got a veteran that's a legit dude that's going to show you and say, you know what? Follow me. I'll show you the Golden Brick Road, and we'll go to Oz together. So having him, Bumper Pool up front. Now, I know you're talking about the secondary. Pass rush has to be better. But I think, leading returning guys, 3.5 sacks. But again, I trust in Barry Odom. I trust in the system. They're going to try and put as many DBs out on the field as they can in that 4-2-6 and then mix it up and send a blitz, whether it's a fire zone, something from somewhere, cat fire, whatever. But I do think the secondary is going to be improved. And whenever you get a guy like Jalen Catalan as a defensive guy, you can take a little more chances. You can maybe stunt the front a little bit more because he can clean it up a little bit. If they get past Bumper, then they're going to get to Jordan. And you feel a lot better about that than having somebody out there that couldn't tackle a math problem in a second grade classroom.
Well, I'll tell you what, just everything else going on in Arkansas with the basketball and the baseball, back-to-back 9-win seasons, or if they surpass that and go 10 wins, would be astronomical for a place like Arkansas and really bring them up to the top, So it's been so long since Arkansas has even been considered top 2 or top 3 in the West, much less the SEC as a whole. So.
Yeah, well, my thing is too, though. Like, I know what Sam Pittman's telling him. Excuse my language, but screw that, dog. Like, forget that. Like, we're not out here trying to play for second or third place. Again, what Sam Pittman and guys like Mario Cristobal and these other guys bring is, man, I don't care what we were last year. I don't care if Bama's supposed to be good. I don't care how good Georgia is. That field's the same size we're going to play on. We recruit guys like you do. We got guys on scholarship, and we ain't damn afraid of nobody. And that's what Sam gets you. Arkansas did not play in a game last year where they were afraid. And when you start building a roster like Sam has built it, it's not about, we look up to Bama, we fear Bama. No, we respect Bama. And I'm talking about we, as Arkansas, even though I'm not from there, Arkansas fan. You can respect somebody, but you can also not fear them. And I don't think Sam and that group fears them. Bumper don't fear him. KJ don't fear him. Rocket don't fear him. Catalan don't fear him. And I feel like that mix and that mindset and that dog in them, that's how you beat those teams, because you feel like you not only belong on that field, but you're a little bit of a different breed of person. And I think that's what Sam Pittman, pun intended, is breeding down there in Fayetteville.
Definitely. And you look at, the Clemson's rise and LSU's rise and these teams that have come up, they've always had that chip and that dog. And then they finally, they're wearing that underdog cape and they just come out of nowhere. So you kind of think, could this be Arkansas's, not this year, but, the rise of Arkansas, and somewhere down the line, maybe they overtake Alabama or whoever's in front of them, win a national championship?
Well, look, again, the game's 4 quarters long, man. And to me, I think another thing is staring at Bama and stuff like that, you get caught that way. What makes Bama great, what makes Saban great is they treat Florida A&M just like Florida. They treat Arkansas State just like Arkansas, because it's not about Bama. It's not about Georgia. Every week the goal is how much better can we get at what we're doing. And if we put enough of those weeks together and we get better and better and better and better, then by the time we snap it, we're going to kick your ass, because that's what we do. So I think not putting that pedestal there and saying, we got Bama week 6. No. First game is the first game. Second game is the second game. It's about the Arkansas. It's not about anybody else. And when you find that out and you figure that out, the scheme may change a little bit, what you're going against. They may run a little more zone or combo coverage. They may be a little more up-tempo offensively, but your identity never changes. So I think that's the difference in going through. And again, that's the only way to survive in the SEC, guys. You cannot overlook anybody, because the minute you overlook somebody, Auburn last year happens. The minute you overlook somebody, you get snake bit by somebody. So I think Coach Pitt understands that, and I think that's the difference in getting to that next level, is realizing it's about yourself, not the other team.
Yeah. Man, you got me ready for September now, just like Devin and Tally just said. You got me pumped up. I'm ready to go, man. Jake, I appreciate you coming on and joining us, buddy.
Sir.
Let us know where we can get your stuff at, bud.
Definitely, man. Well, I appreciate you guys bringing me on as usual. I'm always down to come on. I tend to get a little fired up, as you can see.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm a red-blooded American male, so, it tends to hit me a little bit. But you can find us, Crain and Company. We're on YouTube at Crain Company. We go live 2 to 3 Central, but it stays on there every weekday. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go check it out. We have a lot of fun. It's kind of like a sports bar atmosphere with knowledge and intel. That's kind of how I wanted it. But no, man, I'm excited for the year like you guys. And I'm on Twitter, Jake Crain _ Crain. And we have, like I said, we have a lot of fun. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. And hey, let's hope for a good football season for Auburn and Arkansas at the same time. But until they meet, and then all gloves are off, buddy.
That's exactly. We'll just take a week off after that.
Yes, sir. Bye week.
All right, y'all be good.
Yes, sir.
See you, Jake.
See ya.
Well, that will do it for segment number 1. Jacob, I mean, I'm ready to run through a wall.
Let's go, buddy. Hey, Coach Pitt, let's go, man. You can sign me up. I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, we'll try to regroup after that first segment. And after the break, we will come back and talk some more Arkansas football. We will go back deeper into the alignment, what that can mean for Arkansas, with other teams possibly coming in, and we'll catch you after the break. We want to welcome you back to another episode of the Hawg Talk Live. And again, we want to thank Jake Crain of Crain and Company for coming on. He come on last year, and it was funny that he had just got hacked from they had just got into SEC Media Days, and their what was it? The J-Boy Show account got hacked. So, you get your first SEC Media Days, and then you get hacked. But he's always a good time, and always, I'm tell you what, somebody that us podcasters like us look up to, and how he rose up quickly. He did it, on his own. He was humble and he grinded. So again, thank you for coming on. But Jacob, we got a lot to really talk about, to unpack what we talked about with Jake and this whole realignment and just transfers and, things. And it's talking season. Everybody's bringing out their stadium list, and, we reposted some things like that. And there's some people who are really high on the Razorback Stadium, but then there's some that just don't think that and I think that's going to come with time. But my biggest question to you is, we're already thinking about Texas and OU coming in, but what do you think, say you get Texas and OU come out of the West, and then you got teams like a Clemson and Florida State coming out of the East and making this a huge mega conference? What are your thoughts on that?
So, man, it's just a weird thing to think about, because you think of when it was just Arkansas and South Carolina joining the league, and you thought, oh man, 12-team league, and it was a different thing because it had never been seen before. You had a championship game at the end of the regular season before you go into the national championships and bowl season, and you thought, okay, that's it. And then the Big 12 has Missouri and Texas A&M break apart from the Big 12. And that was really the beginning of it all, because you saw Nebraska go to the Big 10. You saw Colorado go to the Pac-12. And it was just on with the races of their college expansion, their college football expansion. And it was just it's really weird to think that, okay, now you have Texas and Oklahoma. When is it going to set in that Texas and Oklahoma are joining the SEC? It really hasn't set in. It was kind of like a caught you off guard deal last year. Obviously, it was to everybody because you weren't expecting it. When they announced it the first day of SEC Media Days, and it was unintentional from that Texas A&M reporter. So it kind of catches you by surprise. But, man, when you think about the potential of having a Clemson or a Florida State join the league, it just makes the SEC so much stronger, in my opinion. It makes it the premier league in all of college football. And you can think about Arkansas playing a Florida State, which are two kind of similar programs. Or you think about the battle of the Death Valleys between LSU and Clemson. I think the fact that you have these teams potentially joining the conference, or maybe even joining the conference, would be so cool. And kind of what you would do on EA Sports NCAA Football 14, making these super big mega conferences and seeing what sticks. And it's going to be competitive. Like we said last week, it's going to make college football more competitive, at least in the South. And then you have all the leftovers, like what's going to happen with the teams in the Pac-12. What's going to happen to a team like Oklahoma State or Baylor that are borderline college football playoff teams? When is it going to end? Where do these teams go? I mean, that's another big question.
Yeah, and before we go to that, we'll answer, David's comment and his question. I don't think, what Jake said. No, they're not scared of anybody anymore.
No.
They've hung with Bama. They've beaten A&M. The only team that really got them, and we've said this a couple of times, was the Georgia game. That was the only game that they just got shelled.
It was over before the first snap.
Exactly. And then the Auburn game, I mean, Bo Nix just had the game of his life, but they didn't just get stomped. But going on to the point of, we keep on talking about, this is my downfall of having a bunch of teams in. We keep on saying we want a true champion. We want the best way to find a true champion. But if you start stacking all these teams, Texas, OU, then let's just name about 10 of them. You got Texas, OU, A&M, Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, LSU, Kentucky, Florida. And then you go, who are you going to bring in? Say if you bring in a Clemson. So how is that going to make it? We're talking about, Matt and Todd show says competitive balance, but when it comes to how many losses, you're going to have to expand this thing to 16 teams.
Yeah.
Because if you keep this thing at 4 or 8, it's not going to be a competitive balance, because you say Alabama slips up, say they go on a gauntlet of they got to play A&M, Texas, OU, and somehow they go 1-2. Now they're totally out of the question of being in the college football playoff. So therefore, because they go all undefeated everything, and they're a 10-2 team or whatever. But if you go to a 16 team, you're going to have to. If you're going to make these conferences this stacked. But then again, it's like you do have the Big Ten and the SEC. Are you going to guarantee them more spots? Is this going to be since they have it's almost going to be in the election? You're going to have this state has more votes and this state, and I think that's going to be the balance of how many teams are going to be too many teams, and that's where I want to see that go.
Or it could become more like a college basketball thing where, well, is it going to be is the Big Ten or the SEC a 2-bid league? Like, do you just take one of the that's what you're going to have to do, because you look at it and you stack these leagues. Yeah, you're going to have maybe a 2 or 3 loss SEC team that's the champion of the league facing up against maybe a 1 loss or 2 loss Ohio State team, because the Big Ten is going to be, you have Ohio State and Michigan and USC, and that's it. But then you look at the South, and it's just a juggernaut of teams every single week. And you're going to have a 3 or 4 loss team make the playoff eventually if you have these super conferences. So they're going to have to schedule it a little bit differently, try to figure out a way to, Matt and Todd show says, competitive balance, because you've got to have a Vanderbilt or a Kansas to play, to patch your wins, or else you're going to, get left behind as far as making the playoffs.
And Devin brings up a great point, and this is where I was going to go with it. You're going to have to almost go like an NFL type division.
Yeah.
You're going to have your 4 or 5 team, and almost like we were talking about the conference, that 3-3-5 situation. You're going to almost have to go with a wild card.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to, and if that goes, it depends on but say the Big Ten and the SEC form 2 major conferences. That's going to be like your AFC and NFC. and you're going to have wild cards and divisions, and it's going to be the same model. And I think we touched on that last week when we were talking about the marketing and making it, making the most money that you can, because like we said, if you think this NIL and these transfer portals and these kids making money, NCAA is going to take advantage of that. They're going to start stacking conferences. They're going to make college football more enjoyable. They're going to take out that big 2-week gap of that SEC schedule. It's not going to be Alabama versus Alabama State or Mercer or whoever, Arkansas versus Nicholls State. So then again, it's like now we're just starting this rivalry with Arkansas and Missouri. What happens to that? What if Missouri don't? That's a team in the SEC that what happens if they don't stay in the SEC? Or do they start kicking teams out to bring others in? We don't know, because we've seen when this news happens, it happens fast. So you don't know what's going to become of this whole new SEC, but I'm really looking forward to it because it's going to make football enjoyable all year round. But I think they're going to end up having to expand the season, because you can't tell me, and this has been my biggest gripe between, the SEC championship game and the college, they get a month off. I mean, yes, you get a month to prepare for the team, but I think that does more bad than it is good, because you get a team on a hot streak. Say Arkansas goes on a 6-game win streak, finds himself in the college football playoff, and then you give them a month off. They've lost all their motivation. So it's going to be nice to see. I think 1 or 2 weeks, get your guys healthy, 2 weeks, and then we start. You have your wild card games and then go on. But it's going to be fun to see.
Maybe they could do it like the FCS playoffs. You do your 12-game schedule, but you knock out maybe the championship games, and you start the playoffs early, and you just do maybe a regular season champion, and then you go on with your at-large pick. Say you go to 8 or 12 to 16 teams. I mean, I don't really know how large is too large, because obviously you look at thinking last year, was there really 12 to 16 teams that were good enough to go into the playoffs last year? I don't think so. There certainly wasn't any in the shortened 2020 COVID season. There was probably 2 teams. You think about it. I mean, you don't want to water down a playoff too much to where, it just becomes a crapshoot, because then you take the specialness, or if that's even a word, out of college football, because you go from doing the old BCS title game to going to a 4-team. Maybe 8 teams are too much, or the right amount, because after 8, I think waters down the product, in my opinion, Porter, because I think then you have, like last year, you had Alabama, Cincinnati, Michigan, and Georgia in there. And those were beyond.
Yeah, but if you stack these conferences, you're not going to have the Cincinnatis. You're not going to have these teams that go undefeated playing. You're not going to have a UCF.
Right. But my point is though, you're going to have, how many teams is too many, even if you do go to college realignment.
If you're going to go with that NFL, aspect, if you go with the divisions and you have your 8 divisions, there you got 2 teams and then wild cards, or however you play it. I think if you stack those teams up, and if they have to give teams, say there's other conferences that are eligible for this playoff, you're going to have to give them, like what they do with the Power 5. They give them, but it depends on how competitive you go with these conferences.
Right.
Now, if say the Big 10 and the SEC stay at 16, but yet there's still a Pac-12, a Big 12, ACC, then you might want to go to 10 or 12.
Right.
But if you start go ahead.
What do you think about the 10 team? I was gonna say maybe a 10-team playoff, and then you have like a bye week, maybe a bye, and then the number 1 seeds play the not the bye teams, but the teams that were in the very first round. That way, I think 10 is where you can stop.
Yeah,
because
like then, I said, it all depends on how this lays out.
Right.
If it is how it is now, and you still got a Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and then you still got the ACC, you still got some of these conferences. I mean, then again, if you're going to have all these teams, and if, say the Big 10 and SEC are going to demand 2 each, there's 4. So where's the other one's going to come from if you had to do these automatic? But I don't know. That's one of the things. But I just had something come to me. It's like we're talking about these bowl games. What if you do away with kind of like the bowl game sponsors kind of deal? You start naming these divisions after sponsors, these conferences, give them sponsorship. We're talking about the money game, and just if you want to make it more meaningful and do a playoff system, but you could also give hey, go get Best Buy. Now they're over the SEC. Go get, whoever, Credit Karma, whoever, and put them in the ACC. Now they're getting money. These conferences are getting money, basically having a sponsor beside them. Because that's been a big thing with the bowl games is losing the sponsors, and these people are throwing money. That could be another way around it.
And you've got 42 bowl games. Cut them in half. Because, I know you want to give everybody the opportunity to make a bowl game. But, I think it's gotten to the point where there's too many. So if you do go to a 10 or 12 team playoff, it eliminates, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 games, 6 games.
Well, and it makes it more
meaningful.
But you're getting to the point now where the only games that matter is college football playoff games.
Right.
You're seeing the opt-outs, which that's another story that they have every right to do what they do. But it's still causing an effect on the college game, whether we like it or not. Whether we agree with them or don't agree with them, it's still affecting how everything's played. And because you look at Penn State Arkansas game last year, if they'd have had all their players, that'd have been a very exciting game to watch.
Oh, yeah.
But both teams
totally different.
Had guys. We've seen it in every school, and I can't remember if Ohio State even had people opt out their bowl games. There's been people in the college football playoff opt out of the bowl game. So I think what they're doing is this incentive of making these games matter. The NIL, keep these kids in school for the year, and then after the regular season or the bowl system's over with, then they can decide they want to declare for the draft or go to another team. But I think the biggest mistake they did was this half year. You can transfer out halfway through. I mean, that's the only outlier where I'll be like, okay, we need to do away with that because these guys are getting 4 weeks plus summer camp in your system. Now they can go to your rival, tell them exactly what you're doing. Look at like the LSU or the Missouri game, for instance. Somebody can opt out of the Arkansas and go to Missouri, and then they know exactly everything they're running.
Oh, yeah.
So, but no, it's going to, how this money and everything, as much as people don't want to say it, it all comes down to money and revenue and how the NCAA before it, because we know it's going away. It's a cash grab because once this happens, we don't know how many days the NCAA has got left.
No, you're right, because you look around the whole country, everybody wants the NCAA to be done with. I mean, it's like Jake said beforehand, Greg Sankey holds the key to this whole thing. Greg Sankey can say, all right, we're done. And I guarantee you maybe 75% of the whole NCAA Power 5 conferences are going with them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
It's probably already in the works.
You look at it. I mean, the dominoes are falling.
Yeah.
When the kids started making money, and then, and I've said this, preach this from the beginning. As soon as the NCAA started turning this to a business, the kids deserve money because they're making millions and millions of dollars off these kids. But if you look at the beginnings of the Big Ten and the SEC, and they're starting building these conferences, I mean, the works are there. You take the Big Ten and the SEC, how it is now in 2025 with UCLA, USC, what they're getting, and then you got Texas OU and the SEC. They could take those two conferences right there. Be like, hey, we're doing on our own division.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a national championship, they'll have their own national championship. They'll have their own playoff system, and they can do it. I mean, the SEC runs college football anyway.
You're right. And, I mean, when's the last time any meaningful team outside of Clemson, Florida State, the SEC, and the Big Ten, when was the last team that really made an impact? None. I mean,
you had Ohio State, you had Notre Dame,
the last time
Oregon,
team made the playoff.
Oregon.
It's been a while. Oregon. Yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah. But I think a lot of that has to do with, a one loss in a Pac-12 means a lot less than it does a one loss SEC team.
Right.
I mean, and they do get punished for that. They do get punished for their late starts and stuff, like they said, Pac-12 after dark and stuff. So, but then again, you look at when you've stacked up a Michigan State, a Notre Dame, a Cincinnati against Alabama in that first round. I mean, that's where you're giving Nick Saban a month to prepare for your team. I mean, I think there's only been one team that's beat him in the semifinals. And that just shows you right there. He's only been beaten one time in the semifinals. So you get a good coach. And we're also seeing some of these coaches leaving. If this really turns into a crapshoot where everybody like a gold rush and gold mine, are some of these coaches like Dabo going to leave? Is Jimbo and Nick Saban's beef? I mean, is this just frustration because everything that's going on? You got the guy that he was talking about, the recruits or the boosters are out there giving you money, and basically saying when Jimbo tries to deny that they're giving him money, and then you got this guy on the field saying that, you never know what's happening behind the scenes and how much money these kids are really making.
The only time I've ever really disagreed with anything Dabo said was when he started saying something about if I ever saw college football players making money, I was going to quit. Look, the cash grab thing, though, I don't know if that was actually a true quote or not.
It was. It was.
Okay, yeah. I thought that's right.
Here's the deal with me.
What was the context?
I won't back him up. I mean, there is no context. He said what he said.
Yeah.
He didn't. He just said that, he's an old school guy. That doesn't make him right.
No.
Because how can you, when you've made $9 million a year off of the luxury of having a Taj Boyd, Sean Watson, and Trevor Lawrence, and you've won 2 national championships off these teams, those teams got you those $9 million a year contracts.
Yeah.
So you're going to sit there, you're living in your mansion. And this is any coach. This is Jimbo. Jimbo got his contract at Texas A&M because of Jameis Winston.
You're exactly right.
You look at all these coaches who go 1 year with these quarterbacks or these running backs and these teams, and they have what was his name at Minnesota now? He was at Western. Yeah, PJ Fleck. You have one good year at Western Michigan. You go to these Power 5 bowls, and now you're making millions at a Big Ten school. The kids are making you that money. Exactly. You don't have to go grind at a school for 5 years anymore and get a big Power 5 head coaching job. You have a couple of good back-to-back 9-10 win years. Now they want to snatch you up. Look how many coaches come from Arkansas State. Hugh Freeze, Gus Malzahn, I mean, it was crazy. So for anybody to making that much money to sit there and say, well, if they start making money, I might as well just go coach in the NFL. Well, you're still there. You're still in Clemson making $90 million a year. So these guys can talk, but once they get that check every week, they're not saying nothing at all.
No. It just made I thought about it like when they first announced the NIL stuff, like how's that going to affect Dabo? Because the guy's making the $9 million a year, and that's what I was saying. Like, how can you be okay with taking such a big chunk of change every single week when your kids aren't getting anything at all? I mean, obviously they probably were. I mean, you don't ever know, but what's going on the outside, $100 handshakes, whatever, but it's just, I just don't understand. And I know he's old school, but sometimes you gotta adapt. And I adapted. I never thought
this thing was, and this is what I talked about when Jake was on, and we talked about that chip. He was riding that chip. He was riding the underdog. You can't play the underdog role when you've won 2 national championships in 3 years. So what is harder, getting that underdog and riding that chip to the top, or once you get to the top, staying there? That's why Alabama's been as dominant as they have. And that's why only one team's done it, and that's Alabama. Nobody will ever be able to touch what Alabama's done in the history of college football. You can write that book, seal it up, and put it in a time capsule.
And he's been doing it for 16 years.
Yeah. But I think that's where Dabo got in trouble, was the fact that he played this card. Well, that card ran out. It wore out. Now other teams, look, South Carolina's starting out recruiting. He's starting to lose some of his recruits to these other schools. What he used to do, now they still got a good team. I mean, an off year for Clemson was a 10-win season. If that tells you how dominant they've been for the past 10, 12 years. They won 10 games last year, and that was an off year.
And now you look at Arkansas. I mean, Sam Pittman wants to win this thing. And he can play the underdog role perfectly because he's got this chip on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to go. Nobody believed in him. Nobody did when he was hired at Arkansas because Chad Morris and Brett Bielema had made Arkansas, left him in a dump. And the only guy that would take this job was Sam Pittman. And the guy has a chip on his shoulder. He's an old school guy that wants to go out there and prove it the right way. And that I think Sam Pittman can be the next type of coach to have that chip on his shoulder, to bring the underdog role in. And I'm not saying it's going to be this year. I'm not going to say it's going to be next year. But Sam Pittman is going to be dang close to making the college football playoffs before it's all said and done. And it's not going to be this year. It may not be this year. But he's going to make his case for being one of the best hires in Razorback history.
It took Dabo 7 years to build what he did. And I have always compared the two programs, even before Dabo got there, how Clemson's football program and Arkansas football program mirrored each other. And you're having similarities of a coach that gets the culture. You've got your offensive, defensive coordinator who are going to be there multiple years now. If you can get all those three to stay together for 5 to 7 years and you keep recruiting, it's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's bound to happen. I mean, you're already playing with Alabama. You're already playing with Texas. You're already playing with A&M and LSU. You know, you're just that one game, the Georgia game. And then before that, it was the Alabama game. And, it's just all they're needing is the big breakthrough. And it can happen. And you get somebody to buy in. If they were able to win with 3 stars, just think if they start getting squads of 5 stars. And then on top of the transfer portal, you look at how many transfer portal 4 and 5 stars they got. That they know where that's coming. They know what's coming, and they want to be a part of that foundation.
And it's easy to believe in because you start year one and you can see the foundation being set by Sam. He's an accountable guy. He demands hard work, and he builds his relationships on loyalty. Like I've never seen somebody. And I don't know what Chad Morris was selling because he wasn't here very long. But you hear it from the players' parents and the recruits' parents that Sam Pittman, he doesn't just check, just like with Micah Teese. They said, well, what made you decide to come to Arkansas? Well, I mean, Sam Pittman didn't just check on me. The staff came and checked on my mama and daddy. And that's when I realized that's where I want to be.
Look, Sam Pittman knows. He knows to go to the mamas. That's the ones that are in control of their baby.
Exactly.
You make mama happy, you've got to get
everybody's happy.
And he's very sincere about it. This ain't no ploy or trying to sugarcoat it. He really means I've met him at a couple of softball games and the basketball game. The dude's a genuine dude. Means everything. He will talk to anybody that's willing to go up and shake his hand or take a picture with him. He's out going to other games and really out there. He's just he's from right down, just because he grew up in Oklahoma. I mean, Grove, Oklahoma is not that far from Arkansas.
No.
He knows Arkansas. And he gets that's why Frank Broyles was so successful. He wasn't from Arkansas, but he got Arkansas.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes. Eric Musselman, not from Arkansas, but he knows Arkansas. Dave Van Horn, not from Arkansas. He was at Nebraska, and then he comes over and he knows Arkansas. It's just that's what it takes, and it takes a special. And I think you look at Hunter Yurchek, the kingpin there at Arkansas. I don't think he knew what he was getting himself into, but he's seen the culture and what it could become. And it's just like he had that diamond in the rough, and it was the athletic department. He knew what it become, and he just started chipping away and shining it. And I'm telling you, Arkansas has another 9-10 win season this year. The top is going to blow off for this athletic department.
Yeah. And you look at it, and like Hunter Yurchek, he's had success everywhere he's been to as an athletic director or an associate AD. You saw what he could do at Houston. Like he was bringing in big name coaches to come coach for him. You got the basketball program going. You had the football program going with Tom Herman, and then you hired a couple of other guys there that were big time up and coming head coaches. So he can see coaching talent and knows what he's getting. And he demands excellence. He is a very loyal guy. I liked Hunter from the first time I ever met him. It was like one of his first months that he was on the job here at Arkansas. He's a guy that just gets it, and I love it. And that, like you said, that's what needs to happen. And you really look at it, and I don't think it's too far-fetched to say Arkansas may go 9-3, but man, they've got a heck of a chance to win 10 or 11 regular season games because the kids are so bought into a system. It's all about the culture, Porter. And I really believe that Arkansas's got something going where they believe in themselves. They don't play for Sam Pittman like they did Bobby Petrino because they feared Bobby Petrino because all that mattered was winning. He didn't care about your sorry butt.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with Sam Pittman and his coordinators, and I think he had a discussion, and we've said this a couple of times with, Browse went to him about a job. But Sam Pittman's first call was to Barry Odom. I think he told these guys, dude, stick with me. Just give me 4 years or X amount. I'm throwing a number out there. Just give me 4 years. Let's get this thing rolling. And he might ride off in the sunset and let them have the program. You don't know. Or he could have been with like Kendall Browse. Hey, just stick with me for a few years. I know other teams are going to come after you, but you believe in me. Stick with me. I'm going to be gone in 5-6 years. And I'll put a word to Hunter that you need to be the head coach. I mean, he's just that genuine guy. So you're looking at we're talking about the dominoes and how these puzzle pieces. What if that's part of it? Look how many people have been coming after Odom and Browns just the 2 years.
Every single year. Even before they
it's going to keep happening. Exactly. And it's going to keep happening. So, and there was a thing that we thought that Browns was going to Miami. We thought it was a done deal.
Yeah.
We thought it was gone. We thought maybe Odom was going to LSU. So for them to stick by Sam Pittman shows, one, that he's a legit dude. And also he's probably told and not promised them something shady, but he's probably promised them, look, you build me this program and I'm going to give you the program.
Yeah. And money talks. I mean, and they've every single time that Barry Odom and Kendall Browse has been approached, Hunter has. Ooh. Oh man, I tell you, it's because I just saw Devin's comment about Jeff Long. Hunter's always given them what they wanted or what they needed, and Hunter told and Sam Pittman what he wanted. Hunter gave him. Okay, I need to keep my assistants. I need to have this budget. I need to have this recruiting budget. I need to have this coaching assistant budget. And he's gone out there and he's got what he needs. And you look at this recruiting and you see the continuity of the staff. And it goes and transcended to recruiting. And you look at the bottom. And I said something about it on Twitter. You look at the bottom of these classes now, and that was basically about the middle of what you would see in some of Bielema's and Petrino's recruiting classes. These 86, 87 guys, that's the floor. Like these mid 3, high 3 stars, that's your floor as far right now as recruiting goes. And then you're getting these upper level 4 stars. He's building it, and these higher rated guys are believing in him. And it's like you said earlier, once recruits start coming in and they're buying into this system, Arkansas, I mean, the sky's the limit for this program. I always thought that because, I know I'm an Arkansas guy. Some people call me a sunshine pumper, but I try to be a realist. I always thought Arkansas could be a place where a coach could come in and win a national championship. Bobby Petrino showed it. Brett Bielema was right, knocking on the door of an incredible season, and then Toledo happened. And you saw Houston Nutt was dang close twice.
98.
That 98 season, and I saw that freaking video on that a Tennessee fan shared earlier, and I said, "Oh my gosh, why did you have to share that?" But and the 06 season, and it was the Reggie Fish muff punt, and whether Arkansas had got to the national championship that game or not, because LSU lost the weekend before that. Man, Arkansas has been close on many occasions throughout the last 20 years. And Sam Pittman may be the guy that gets them there because it's consistency is key, and he's got the continuity with the staff. If he can keep them together, I think Arkansas can hit all kinds of new levels of success that hasn't been seen here before since the 70s and 80s with Lou Holtz, with Broyles, and Ken Hatfield.
Yeah, and with, Nick Saban can't just walk into a kid's room anymore and be like, hey, I got all these national championships.
Right.
They don't, you might get him for a year, and then guess what? He's going to go somewhere else and go to another school. This is all playing into Sam Pittman's hands. You get these kids, these portal kids, these kids out of high school, and you get these guys to believe in your system. You're building the perfect recipe for a national championship. Whether it happens, it doesn't. But he's building a recipe. He's got his family intact. Now he's going to go get his kids. And that's what really excites me. But this is going to be a telltale year on how, we got to see progress. We've said it. You can't go back to a 6-7 win team anymore. You can win 8. I give him 8 because this is a tough schedule. I say 9, but if he went on 8-4 this year, I would say that's an okay season. Like, I can deal with that. But if you slip back and you go to a 6 win where you're barely making a bowl game, where do we get? You can't slide back like that, especially when you're on a high like you are and you're recruiting on the level that you are. You got to keep it a 8-9 win season. 10 would be great, but we know that they're having the toughest conference or toughest schedule, and it's not going to get any easier. They still got to play Notre Dame. Then they got Texas and OU coming in. Then you don't know who else you're going to be playing. So it's only up from here. So we hope that they can hang with it and really, man, I'm just saying, like, it doesn't matter what happens. If you get a national championship in football, the fan base will be happy for the rest of their lives.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have been hungry. They've been, like you said, they've been close. You give this team a national championship. I know what it's like. I never thought I would experience a national championship in my lifetime. And they won in 16 and 18, but nothing will ever be as sweet as that 1 in 16 when they beat Alabama. Deshaun Watson to Hunter Renfrow, still one of the most exciting moments I've ever witnessed as a sports fan. So, I mean, if it can happen there, it can happen here.
Yeah. And I know we're getting close. We need to wrap it up, but man, there's just something inside of me. I really like this team, and I'm not trying to build all these fans up and get them to drink the juice. Like, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just sharing with you the excitement that I have for this team, because I feel like this team is the closest they've been in a long time. And it's because I follow them, because I cover this program, and I see how close they are. And I'm as heartbroken as, I may not be as heartbroken as the players are, but I promise you, to the fans, I'm just as heartbroken as you are after a loss. Like, It's hard to write, but I'm just telling you, like, it's okay to be excited about this season coming up. It is okay to put your emotions into this, because this may be it. And if it's not, it's okay, because you have the future coming soon. But I promise you, put your emotions. Just forget about the Bielema years, those close losses. Forget about 2-10 under Chad Morris. I feel like the days of when Bobby Petrino coached and Houston Nutt was here, and it's not that far long ago. I feel like you can put your emotions and ride, just like the end of the season with the baseball team, where we lived and died by each pitch. We're going to be able to live and die by each stride of the beautiful running of KJ, Rocket Sanders, Dominique Johnson, running up and down the field on every team this season. I feel like you can. I feel like you can.
In so many sports we've seen guys come back to win a championship. And I think it's finally going to hit, and one of these years, because you look, KJ, this is it. This is going to be his final year. We know it. So if it's going to happen, it's like we put so much emphasis in that baseball team. We just all the talent that we thought they had. And last year it was going to be the year. They had all this talent. They were the number one team. It didn't pan out. This year, a lesser talented team ended up going to the College World Series. Right. But Robert Moore come back. You had all these guys coming back. So it's going to be very exciting to see if KJ Jefferson finds those two receivers. That's going to be the biggest key to this team. We know what he's got. If he can find those guys, this is going to be a dangerous team, because they're going to have to be dangerous, because they're not sneaking up on anybody anymore.
No.
They expect you now. So now it's going to be harder than ever. It's going to get harder and harder the more, more years we go down the road.
Yeah. And it's going to be fun to watch. I'm telling you, put your emotions onto this team. Let it, just ride it. Just ride the wave, guys. Just ride the wave. Porter, I'm gonna let you close it up. I don't think I have anything left to say. I put my emotions out in the last 3 minutes. I don't know
what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And keep the comments coming. Leave us some questions, some topics we can bring up for next week's show. We're going to be coming back every week here live. Presented to you by Bet Online and Arkansas Brewing Company out of Ozark, Arkansas. So for great episode. We want to thank again Jake Crain of coming on, but we love all the interaction. I think this is the most interaction we've had with our listeners of any podcast. So, keep them coming. We appreciate it. We try to get to each and every one of them. I missed one about a baseball player last week, and I do apologize for that. But that will do it for Jacob Davis, myself, Porter Hayes. We will catch you next week.
Go Hogs.